So, ladies and gentlemen, so we're going to get right into our program for tonight. And before we do that, let me just take a minute to tell you guys about this organization, the Africa Agenda. I am the founder of the organization. The mission of Africa Agenda, if you're aware, we want to change African news. We think there's issues with the way the reporting of African news and information, and our mission is primarily to change the trajectory of African news as it's reported by the media. And there are different ways that you can do that. We have a news platform, which is our website, and the other platform is events like this. So, without further ado, we have Dr. Sharon Bailey with the International Black Women's Conference. So, without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Sharon Bailey.
Good evening. I saw myself a little further down on the agenda. That's okay. Africa in my veins, Africa in my blood, Africa in my DNA. And yes, I found that my DNA analysis on my mother's side connects me and my ancestral roots to the Cameroon. So I'm pretty grounded here. But I've been blessed in my life to know Africa through my involvement in the leadership of the International Black Women's Congress. The International Black Women's Congress is a global community of women of African descent, bound by our ancestral spirituality. Our vision is to bring forth exemplary models of African womanhood by defining ourselves, embracing ourselves, and improving ourselves through social, political, and economic empowerment. This organization is over 30 years old, and it was me and one of my mentors from Princeton University, Dr. LaFrancis Rogers Rose, started this organization, and we've been fortunate enough to network with women around the globe, in Senegal, in the Gambia, in Morocco, in Egypt, Nigeria, and Kenya, and Ghana. And so I feel that I've had a blessed life to have really set my heart and soul in Africa and know that experience. Members of our organization have supported an orphanage in Banjul, Gambia, and a women's health clinic in Guinea-Bissau. This past September, we celebrated our 31st annual conference in Virginia Beach, Virginia, entitled The Emerging Black World, Cultural Unity. And some of you may or may not know that the UN General Assembly has proclaimed 2015 through 2024 the International Decade for People of African Descent through Resolution 68/337, citing the need to strengthen national, regional, and international cooperation in relationship to full enjoyment of economic, social, cultural, and political rights for people of African descent and their full participation in society, in all aspects of society. The decade's theme is recognition, justice, and development. It is an opportunity to recognize how across the world, people of African descent are particularly vulnerable to racism and marginalization. It is an opportunity to encourage states and nations to implement comprehensive political measures to ensure human rights protections and equity for people of African descent. This includes rights to development, measures against poverty, access to basic goods such as healthcare, education, housing, and employment. In proclaiming this decade, the international community is recognizing that people of African descent have a distinct group whose human rights must be promoted and protected. Around 200 million people identifying themselves as being of African descent live in the Americas. Many millions more live in other parts of the world outside of the African continent. The decade is dedicated to building community and exploring ideas, issues impacting people of African descent, both locally, in our community here and globally. The program of activities, and you can go to the UN Decade website and you'll see these things laid out. But the program of activities calls for national and local efforts to take concrete and practical steps through the adoption of effective implementation of national and international legal frameworks, policies and programs to combat racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, which we're seeing a lot of right now, and related to all of the intolerance that people of African descent encounter on a day-to-day basis, taking into account the particular situation of women, girls, and young males. In our community, and we're asking you to join us in this effort, we want to focus on the concept of Ubuntu, a Pan-African humanist philosophy and principle that identifies the collective humanity and strength we hold as Afro-descendant peoples. I am because we are. The practice of Ubuntu will guide our work for the decade, creating safe spaces for inter and intra-communal dialogue and critique that is intersectional, intergenerational, and multidimensional. We want to acknowledge our interconnectedness of African descendant peoples globally here in our community through shared lives, our shared histories, our shared pain, and the need for political reform and the establishment of institutions. So I'm here to offer, reach my hand out to you, African Agenda, University of Denver, to join us in planning a series of events and programs beginning in January, February of 2016, where we can focus on bridging and making those bridges connect people of African descent from the Caribbean, South America, Africa, and here in the US, who are citizens of the state, to explore our common interests, establish common ground, and build community. We want to learn more about our common history, our cultures, and we are going to encourage history and culture moments in our organizations, in our churches, and in our homes. And finally, some of you may or may not know of the work of the Colorado Black Roundtable over the last 2 years. But we've been looking at the disparities that were first identified in a report by the Rocky Mountain PBS investigative team. And it was a report called Losing Ground. And in that report, one of the most startling things was their observation, their conclusion, that when it comes to some of the most important measures of social progress, income, poverty, education, and home ownership, the gaps between minorities and whites in Colorado are worse now than they were before the Civil Rights Movement. Before the Civil Rights Movement. And when we look at some of the rhetoric locally and nationally of some of our politicians, the landscape is pretty darn scary. And if we don't come together, I think we're going to suffer even more, and we're going to lose more ground. One of the most startling statistics relative to Colorado was the fact that Colorado has the largest college degree attainment gap of any state in the nation between Anglo and Black and brown students. You know, our health care, we're sicker than most and we're dying sooner than we should. And the infant mortality rate of African Americans in this state is 2 to 3 times more than other groups. And you all know that we are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. So we're reaching out to you, African Agenda, University of Denver, our brothers and sisters, in recognition of the UN Decade for People of African Descent, with hopes that we can break down the silos that we live and work in, that we can move beyond the divide and conquer tactics in order to come together, work together, and stay together. Tomorrow, Saturday, our regular monthly meeting, we'll be looking at affordable housing in Denver, which is in a crisis mode. 10 o'clock, Hiawatha Davis Recreation Center, 35th and Holland. We invite you to join us. So I'm going to close with an equity manifesto. And it begins by joining together, believing in the potency of inclusion and building from a common bond. It embraces complexity as a cause for collaboration, accepting that our fates are inextricable. It recognizes local leaders as national leaders, nurturing the wisdom and creativity within every community as essential to solving the nation and the world's problems. It demands honesty and forthrightness, calling out racism. It strives for the power to realize our goals while summoning the grace to sustain them. It requires that we understand the past without being trapped in it, that we embrace the present without being constrained by it, and look to the future guided by the hopes and the courage of those who have fought before and beside us. This is equity, just and fair inclusion into a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential, unlocking the promise of the nation and the world by unleashing the promise that's in all of us. Thank you for your time and attention, and it's been a joy to be here. I would break out in a dance, but I don't think I would see that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bailey. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Naquita Ricks. I am originally from Liberia, West Africa, and I too am a proud graduate of Aurora Central High School. So, I was asked tonight to just talk about the state of Liberia and where we are post-Ebola. After the Ebola crisis, the economy was hit very hard, as you know. Mining and all types of activities within the country ceased because people were scared, fear, tourism stopped, and all of that. All of the schools were closed. You're starting to see that the school system is coming back. Primary school students are coming back to school. Things are recovering within the country. There's still a lot that needs to be done within the country, and whatever you can do to help through Doctors Without Borders. There was some recent news reports that said that there were new cases of Ebola found in Liberia. There's 3 that was recently reported in the news, so that's troubling.
From he's representing the African Leadership Group, Suleiman.
As you mentioned, my name is Suleiman Kamara. I'm part of the African Leadership Group. I'm actually the president of the African Leadership Youth Group, which is the youth portion of it. So most of the time people get confused when they hear the word youth. We still like to think that we are still young. One of the things that we try to do is to really empower the community to be engaged politically. Because policies that are passed, laws that are made affect you. And if you are not part of it, then you have no say into it. So we make sure that the African community are aware of the policies that are coming on.
And we have Abdul Kadir.
My name is Abdirashid Abdul Qadir Hussein. I am a founder of President of United African Community Development Council of America. I am a currently employed at Denver International Airport as well as student in Colorado Community College. Thank you for inviting me here, African Agenda. Our goal is establishing African community as integrated party in this country, which offers so much opportunity to all. When the community united, we a voice can get organized for all of us to open the door every opportunity available.
So my name is Susan Abbott, and I'm on the board of Africa Agenda. And our next speakers are two Colorado-based gentlemen, both working on the frontiers of doing Africa-related work. One is doing work in East Africa primarily, also in Somalia, and the other has been doing a lot of work in West Africa as well as other countries. So without further ado, Ben, please come up and tell us about the work of One Earth Future.
My name is Ben Llewellyn. I work at Oceans Beyond Piracy, which is a project of the One Earth Future Foundation. Part of what I want to talk about is tonight is the rise and fall of Somali piracy and kind of where we are today in that. The height of Somali piracy kind of happened in 2011, where nearly 1,000 hostages were being held at one time. Since then, a total of 2,950 seafarers have been held hostage since the early 2000s. And to this day, there's still 43 seafarers still being held hostage, 26 of which have been held for almost 4 years now. But since 2011, there's been a rapid decline in the incidence of Somali piracy, which was mostly due to what I like to call the three-legged stool of counter-piracy, of armed guards, international and naval deployments, and then just ship protection measures, which is kind of like barbed wire going around the ship that just essentially makes it harder to be hijacked. The long-term solution is on shore, not at sea, and it's really tied to the overall stability and economic well-being of Somalia itself. This really means that we need to kind of redo the three-legged stool of counter-piracy into transforming those legs into governance, security, education, economic well-being, and all these other issues that need to be addressed. And kind of has to happen from a bottom-up and top-down fashion, where there's engagement all throughout the political spectrum. Thank you again, and have a good evening.
I just joined TerraFrame about a year ago. My background is not in global development, it's in Department of Defense and intelligence. And I can tell you it's a lot cheaper to save lives than to catch bad guys. And I think that's a great statement, but what you guys are doing is a great thing, and I'm proud to be a part of it. Our software is currently running in Africa, India, Cambodia, and other countries around the world. We're proud to say we're part of the Presidential Malaria Initiative that has spent $800 million on malaria and mapping decisions and data so that you can see where you need to apply resources and treatments around the world. But we're able to upload our software into the cloud, and then people get to use it freely there. Organizations like yourself get to use it to map where treatments need to happen. It has saved, they're reporting about 5 million people. So when you do the math, that's $160 a person to save a life. And I think that's a great thing that we can do that around the world.
Welcome everyone tonight. My name is A. Scott Dupree, which stands for Andrew, and I'm with an organization called Civil Society Transitions, and I'm also a proud 3 or 4 year board member of Africa Agenda. So I'm really pleased to see everyone here tonight. I actually just got off a plane from Indonesia, where I was working with climate change activists who are, many of them going to the COP in Paris next week. And we went to see a bioenergy project, which was basically in a man's house in Banda Aceh, which is one of the places where the tsunami hit, if you remember, several years ago. And he proudly took us to show us this cow. The poor cow stands in a shed, and the shed is on the edge of his compound, and behind the shed there's this pit, and everything that the cow decides it doesn't need anymore goes into the pit. And then all you need to do is shovel what's in the pit into this hole that's about this big, and it goes into a tank, and miraculously everything that goes into that tank then cooks his meals in his kitchen. So, you know, I think that in energy we have seen an amazing transition. I think that we've seen energy become much closer to the people and much less far away. And I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit that we hear from Dr. Paul Ndioni from the National Renewable Energy Laboratories. So give it up for Paul.
Thank you very much. It's a little bit challenging to talk about energy because there are so many things going on, but there is no doubt that the economy of Africa is one of the fastest growing economy in the world. I believe in renewable energy. I believe that's one of the main energy we need to focus on. And Africa has resources for renewable energy. We're talking about solar energy. I mean, Africa is one of the best places in the world to develop renewable energy, to develop solar energy. So, but how to do this? Because we talk, of course, a lot about energy. There are a lot of talk, but today we should be beyond talking. And some of the solution will be, of course, working with the government, because we need with the government to develop framework in order to allow private investor to have interest in renewable energy. We need to lead this, because nobody will be developing Africa, for us. We should be leading, and at the same time have partnerships, strong partnership with countries, foreign countries, and also private investor. But also another thing I wanted to bring up is, last week I was reading in Bloomberg where they were talking about microgrids being the future of Africa, in terms of development of energy. So microgrid is technologies that gather, for example, renewable energy. It could be solar or solar and wind associated, but also battery to store the energy, and eventually also diesel in order to power, in order to give power in case there is no sun or no wind, etc., etc. There are still a lot of work to do, but as Africans, we really need to lead this. Somebody was talking about technology. Yes, technology is great, and we need that, but we also need the help of the government in order really to create an environment where we can develop this. And I believe I have been taken. Thank you, and if you have questions, I will
We're going to hear from Jeremy Briest, who is a social entrepreneur and works for and founded an enterprise called Nadi Ties. And basically the idea is that refugees coming to our community bring amazing skills, are very innovative, and they've made this product, these ties, which Jeremy tells me are actually selling and are going to be a big success. So let's hear a bit more.
Thank you so much, everyone here at the Positive Center for inviting Nadi Tie. We're a for-profit company, and so we're certainly involved in the entirety of the picture of the solution in terms of helping. About 3 years ago, after volunteering with resettled refugees here in this country, we just listened to them, and they were telling us that they actually had an abundance of skills. They knew how to farm. They knew how to sew. They know how to do things that people in this country don't want to do anymore. Let's make their transition here in the United States much easier. If you can't speak English, but you can still engage in your trade, and you can still have meaning and value in the work you're doing, it's a different ascension in this American livelihood. So we partnered with the resettlement agencies, the African Community Center, Lutheran Family Services. They help us identify any refugees that are coming into this country that want to sew and know how to sew, get interviews at our company. And we hire them not only to just sew, but to attempt to integrate fully into our business model, to give them a real chance at livelihood in this country. But the key to the model is creating opportunities based upon the existing skills and creating training programs to provide those skills so that people have a better chance of succeeding. Thank you.
Let's welcome Michael Williams.
Thank you, George. Thank you for inviting me. I am from Congo. I grew up there. My father was a banker. He just passed away 3 years ago. My mom was a businesswoman. She just turned 80 Tuesday. Going home, seeing the poverty, what Congo has become, as a son of the country, I felt like I had obligation to do something. When I came to the United States, my father wanted me to go back home. You know, I finished school in France, but I didn't want to go home. So he said, I'm not going to send you the money. I just had $135. But when you're young, I'm 26, you don't care what you eat, where you sleep. And from a lot of sacrifices, I built a business. So I know how to build business. In 2010, when I turned 50, when you become older, my sons, I have 4 sons, the third is 1, they say you're old man. But the thing about being old, you think before you do something. When I turned 50, I went home, I said, as a son of the country, I have to do something. I took half of my company back home. I went back home, I created jobs. Not just jobs, because I know paycheck is not just a paper, it's not just money. Paycheck change people's lives. When the spouse brings money, you have things to eat, you can buy medicine, you can help your family. So I was paying people well. But seeing what I was seeing in the country as a businessman, I say, I cannot change the country if I'm a businessman. I have to come back and lead the country. Because what I have is skills, and the little gift that God has given me, I can do better. The second element when I talk about Africa, when I go around and talk, give speech and talk to people, I talk to Africans and said, as African son or African daughters, we have obligation to tell the story about Africa. Because my father used to tell me, a person who doesn't know his story or her story is a big mistake. Because if somebody comes to you and tells you like, your father used to be a thief, how are you going to defend it? You don't know your father's history. So when you see the media, you know, I cannot name names. When I was a businessman, it was easy for me to name names. But now when I name names, I get 25 calls from all the country. So I don't name names. When you say about Africa, most of the time it's a negativity. You know, Africa's this, Africa's that. You know, you see African people, you know, on the floor, you know, various international entities, you know, bringing us food. But that's not Africa. Africa is the oldest continent. We used to do commerce starting 900, you know, with various continents. We have our own culture. We used to have kings. We used to have our own laws, our own way to do weddings, our own way to live, way to act to eat. So we have history. It's not like we just you know, it's just the people you see begging for things. No. The only thing we don't have in Africa, we don't have a good leadership. Most Africans, leaders, they don't create infrastructure that we need to do small commerce, to invest in Africa. That's the only problem we have. But I'm seeing the new generations coming, the one coming from abroad, like us, coming from new mentality, seeing like a country is more important than you. So I'm seeing Africa start to change. Do not discount Africa. It's a place it's the next thing, like business people say. So as African son, I can tell you people in Africa, we're not lazy. We work hard, especially women. They work from dawn to dusk. You know, they go, those small cameras come and cook and do stuff. So we work hard. The only thing is what we're asking for our leaders to just create infrastructure for all of us to do what we're supposed to do. And I would like to thank George for the job he's doing, telling Africa's story, telling about us, telling about our mothers and our fathers. And for you guys who you don't know Africa well, you know Africa from CNN, wherever it is, sorry, but you're gonna know Africa. Election in Congo is in 2016, the same month, United States, November. I have a lot of friends that are following the thing, so Peter, the professor, is a good friend of mine, is really following the elections in Congo, because there's no other implications. And now we're seeing all the Boko Haram, all evil stuff. Congo is the second largest country in Africa. I was talking to the senators, I told them, if Congo is unstable, you have 9 countries around unstable. So we have, all of us, to come together and bring peace and security. Let's just live together, disagree agreeably, and love each other. Thank you very much.